All right, so we're underneath the van here. This is actually pretty good for East Coast rust. This is what we have to deal with. So now that we have the heater tested and know that everything's working, it's coming time to install it in the van. Before you order the heater, you kind of want to identify a couple different spots where you might mount it. I identified 4, and only one of those is actually going to work out for us. It was a combination of trying to avoid the structural ribs underneath that support the floor. On this van, they run crosswise. They interfered with 2 of the locations I wanted to use, the one directly behind the driver's seat and one underneath the bed. And then the 3rd location would have worked. I would have had to extend one of the air hoses a little bit, but I was worried about road debris. And the way these mount is that you cut a hole in the floor, and then these pieces here, so that intake and exhaust and the fuel line here go through the floor. They're kind of sensitive to road debris. You don't want them to get knocked by a rock or something like that. So that kind of ruled out that position in the back, even though it's probably the most ideal from like a noise and plumbing standpoint. So we settled upon a location right here. It's close to the battery, the electrical panel here, and there's no support ribs underneath. This is going to end up being a pretty good spot. Everything's compromised, especially in a space this small. I'm going to mount it somewhere right around there. The support rib on our van lines up with this rib here on the inside. So there's a support channel along the floor here that we have to avoid. It's really thick and I don't want to drill it because it supports big structural portion of the van. So it's going to be kind of a game trying to be as far back as I can so the outlet is unobstructed by this piece here, but still clearing those support ribs and having clearance for my intake and exhaust hose. And I do have a nice reference point to work with is this wire that runs through the floor up to the battery combiner, and this runs forward. So I do have a nice reference point. Another thing that we need to think about is how far in and out. So I would like to have this as far close to this wall as possible to maximize floor space. But unfortunately, it's not quite as simple as that. At least on our Chevy Express, this is the way everything is kind of built. So we have the floor here, and we have the exterior of the van here. So the way this van is, and I'm sure most others are like this or similar, is the rocker panel extends past the floor, and then ours has this little sheet metal box. So this area right here is kind of like in the rocker panel. So we can't drill a hole like at the far edge because we'll actually go into this closed in rocker panel area, and we can't do that. So we have to make sure our holes for our exhaust, fuel, and intake are on this side of the rocker panel. So this is the mounting plate that it comes with, about 6.5 inches wide by 5.5 long. And what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to cut through all of the plywood and the laminate flooring we have, the vinyl flooring we have, because this needs to bolt directly to the metal floor in the van. Because of clearance issues and the high temperatures from the exhaust, you really can't like just drill a hole through the wood and call it good. All right, so we're underneath the van here. This is actually pretty good for East Coast rust. This is what we have to deal with. So here's the floor, and this is that big structural channel, and you can see it's really, really thick, and I don't want to hit it. So we thought about coming out the floor about 11 inches down from the wire, which will put us about here. We want to come over 7 inches from where the wire goes through, and the wire comes through at 9.5. So that's 9.5. So minus 7 is 2.5. So this is where those exhaust ports should come out, and this is actually a pretty good spot. I'm pretty happy with that. We'll give this a little shot of paint when we're done cutting the holes. So we'll go grab a drill from the top down, and just kind of double check our measurements and make sure everything's okay with the small little hole. So in case we have to fill it with some sealage or something, we can do that. So that looks pretty good right there. So I'm using a blade here with very fine teeth because it's cutting very thin sheet metal. If you use a blade with like very coarse teeth, it would rip off the teeth and make a horrible, horrible racket. So if you have a blade with very fine teeth, this is the place to use it. plunge into one of those holes I made earlier and start our cut. So my blades aren't long enough to cut this top surface where I have to stick the shoe with the jigsaw to reach all the way down. Fortunately, I'm going to have to use this thing to finish up the cut. So the heater will sit just like that.
In our next video, Andy will install the electrical components for the heater. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with all of our projects.